ladies and gentlemen, I should say this is a great opportunity for us to have a side event with the team of the UN climate building resilience for climate change adaptation in archipelagic and small island developing countries. I have also to welcome the speakers as well as the guests that were here for having this good conversation and also having the discussion right after the speakers conveying their message. Can I, first of all, besides welcoming you, is also to introducing you what is the agenda for today's event, starting from 11:30 up to 1 p.m. this morning and afternoon. This event will, first of all, open by the chair, and then after that, immediately after that, is by Mr. Tommy Ahmad Purnomo. He is the Senior Advisor on Public Policy of the Minister of Marine Affairs and Fisheries. And the second will be followed by, he's sitting next to my left, Excellency Abdullahi Majeed, State Minister, Maldives. And then after that, number 3 is His Excellency Mr. Ronald Jumeau, Ambassador for Climate Change and Small Island Developing State Issues, Republic of Seychelles. Number 4 is Dr. Biliana Cicin-Sain, President, Global Ocean Forum, and followed by the Food for Thought by Emily Pidgeon, Conservation International. The 6 speakers is Mr. Gerald Millers, and be followed with the same topic, one of his partner, Mr. Yusuf Safiuddin, from our Taman Nasional Karimun Jawa, National Park Karimun Jawa in Indonesia. And the last one will be Mr. Manuel Cira, the World Ocean Network, the President, Planet Citoyen, and organizer, Le Forum de la Mer. So those are the agenda of this event. I would like now to invite Mr. Ahmad Purnomo, the Senior Advisor on Public Policy of the Minister of Marine Affairs and Fisheries, the Republic of Indonesia. You have the floor, Mr. Ahmad Purnomo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to convey the apologies of His Excellency Minister Susi Pudjiastuti, as she could not attend this important event due to some unforeseen circumstances. She, however, sent her warm welcome and regards to all of you, especially the distinguished speakers, and wish you a successful event. Secondly, on behalf of the Minister, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our partners who have made this event possible. Indeed, it is a privilege for us to work with you, and we believe that together with the speakers and the audience, we can build a better cooperation in the future in tackling the climate change impacts. Climate change and its consequences have long been globally recognized, while its effects are too obvious to ignore. Developing archipelagic states and small island developing states face serious threats from adverse impact of climate change due to their geographical realities, surrounded by the sea and with vulnerable landscape being threatened with sea level rise, ocean acidification, and rising temperatures. Faced with difficulty choices in shaping the future of their people and sustaining livelihood, they have They view adaptation as a matter of urgency in ensuring survival. Mitigation is a strategic longer-term issue which, in our case, will have to be integrated into our adaptation approaches and programs. As an archipelagic country having more than 17,000 islands, 95,000 kilometer coastline, and coastal inhabitants of more than 140 million people out of 250 million people population of Indonesia. The Indonesian economy relies on our marine resources and coastal activities. Our archipelagic waters provide fish as important source of protein, which traditionally has been a major food source consumed in many parts of Indonesia. Geographically located in global ocean conveyor belt between Indian and Pacific Oceans, Indonesia is indeed a vulnerable country to climate change. We have experienced increased coastal vulnerability, degradation of coastal ecosystems, sinking small islands, and increased inundation of human settlements and agricultural as well as industrial zones. Loss of home for 42 million of coastal communities in 2050 has been predicted, while income resources are threatened immediately as well as in the longer term. Uncertainty in fishing activities due to unpredictable seasonal changes and altered migration routes of fish have also added pressure on food security. In the long term, not only will the economy of coastal communities be impacted, but also the national economy as a whole. In addition to climate change, Indonesian fisheries is also confronted with illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing practices. IUU fishing, as we know it, is a serious global problem and concerns us as this threatens our ocean ecosystems and sustainable fisheries. Millions are adversely affected from it. It has become the main cause of economic revenue loss from our marine resources. Not only threaten ocean ecosystems and fisheries, IUU fishing also carries related crimes, including human rights abuses and drug trafficking. We strongly believe that IUU fishing, as well as related crimes, are a transnational organized crime. It is in the light of this that His Excellency President Joko Widodo stated last year in COP21 that combating IUU fishing and protecting the marine biodiversity are the priority actions in mitigating and adapting climate change impact. Combating IUU fishing is also a strategic entry point in ensuring sustainability of marine and coastal resources, and at the same time, deterring the related crimes. Combating IUU fishing have saved us 37% of fuel consumption in captured fisheries activity within the last 2 years. This equals to 1.3 million kiloliter of fuel, which means a lot of in reducing CO2 emissions. Resolute and firm action against IUU fishing have resulted in coastal communities regaining confidence in facing up to destructive fishing practices, increased commitment to protect the environment, increased fishermen exchange value, and more fish being available to local fishermen. Combating IUU fishing is also simultaneously deterring other criminal activities. At present, the government is continuing the reshaping of captured fisheries in order to ascertain sustainability as well as prosperity for coastal communities. IUU fishing practices have also been the regional concerns. ASEAN and SAFEDEC, Southeast Asia Fisheries Development Center, have recently conducted high-level consultation on regional cooperation in sustainable fisheries development towards the ASEAN Economic Community in Bangkok early August this year. The product of the HIC high-level consultation is Joint ASEAN SAFEDEC Declaration on Combating IUU Fishing and Enhancing Fish and Fisheries Product Competitiveness in Southeast Asia. This joint declaration was subsequently welcomed and noted by the ASEAN leaders in the 28th and 29th summit in Vientiane, Lao PDR on early September this year. Indonesia is blessed with valuable coastal ecosystems such as mangroves, tidal marshes, and seagrass meadow. All of these provide benefits and services that are essential for climate change adaptation. These ecosystems have the potential to remove and store atmospheric carbon at much greater rates than terrestrial ecosystems and are now being recognized for their role in mitigating climate change and subsequently referred to as blue carbon ecosystem. Coastal area and small islands, however, are subject to a wide range of physical forces from climate change impacts. The sustainable management of coastal ecosystems can improve livelihood and help mitigate climate change effects and increase resilience. So far, adaptation measures are mostly focused on preserving and enhancing natural resilience of coastal systems to climate change by implementing the blue economy principles, a new approach in managing ocean resources in Indonesia. These include protecting key coastal and nearshore marine ecosystems that are vulnerable to climate change impacts, and rehabilitating those key ecosystems degraded as a result of coastal development or other anthropogenic factors. Blue economic requires the active participation of the communities. To increase their participation, together with them, we have developed 47 coastal climate resilient villages to improve the preparedness of coastal communities to climate change related disaster, and 39 coastal community schools to raise awareness of coastal communities, particularly to students in the coastal area, to foster enhanced capacities needed to mitigate and adapt to climate change. While the National Agency for Meteorology, Climatology, and Geophysics has initiated to establish Fisher's Climate Field School. All of these are in the line with the Paris Agreement, which elevates education to new heights as important avenues toward climate action. Marine protected areas in the long term will provide a distinct advantage in addressing the impact of climate change by providing a focus for area management and application of scientific knowledge to reduce stressors, monitor conditions and trends, and engage the public, especially coastal traditional community. We call it the Adat community, with their centuries-long wisdom in managing coastal resources. At present, Indonesia's MPA covers more than 17 million hectares at 154 locations. Ocean issues in climate change is recognized to play in combating global climate change in Indonesia's NDC. As stipulated in the NDC, Indonesia is committed to implement integrated landscape-based approach in managing terrestrial, coastal, and marine ecosystem, and to improve its management of natural resources to enhance climate resilience by protecting and restoring key terrestrial, coastal, and marine ecosystem. Indonesia continues to enhance the existing efforts in mitigation and adaptation and to incorporate ocean issues in Indonesia National Plan of Action on Climate Change, and also strengthening national and international network on ocean and climate change. Archipelagic states and island states, in particular small island and developing states, share common concern in ocean issues, and there are opportunities to promote closer cooperation among those states on climate change-related issues, which may include capacity building, sharing knowledge and experience, as well as strengthening international cooperation. Lastly, I would like to stress the importance of international cooperation in overcoming climate change. Developing and least developed countries have marginal contribution to greenhouse gases emissions. Yet, they are the ones suffering the most from the resulting climate change impacts. Effective and well-defined international cooperation is a moral obligation in order to establish climate climate justice. With that, Mr. Chair, I would like to finish my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmad Purnomo. I have two things that hadn't had an opportunity to inform you. The first thing is that we will have the discussion rightly after the speakers are having their statement. And then the second thing is to introduce myself. My name is Sharif Samsuri, the ambassador of the Republic of Indonesia to Morocco and Islamic Republic of Mauritania. So again, thank you very much, Mr. Ahmad Purnomo. I would like now to invite His Excellency Abdullahi Majeed, the State Minister of Maldives, and would like to say concerning the managing small islands for climate change adaptation. You have the floor, Minister.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, esteemed fellow panelists, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Very good morning to you all. It gives me great pleasure to be with you all to share our experience in building resilience in small island developing states. As it is apparent to most people, small island states are among the most vulnerable countries to climate change. Climate change threatens the existence of small island developing states like my own, the Maldives. I have no doubt similarities exist with many other states. Being a small island country presents a unique challenge in building resilience to climate change and its adverse impacts. The cost of adaptation in our countries increases significantly due to the small size, small scale, and remoteness of the islands. In Maldives, we have a small population of around 350,000 people scattered in 194 islands across 900 kilometers long archipelago. Of course, nothing rivalry to Indonesia. They are huge in many ways, being just about a meter or two high from sea level rise. Protecting the communities from coastal hazards is a key priority. Providing the needed coastal protection to all communities would cost more than $8.8 billion for Maldives. We also have to sustainably provide basic services like access to potable water, ensure food and energy security, and address the impacts of extreme events. However, with our survival at stake, we have to find a way to build resilience in most cost-effective way possible. So in Maldives, we are moving towards integrated solutions for adaptation. One example is our integrated water resource management, where we use desalinated water to supplement the rainwater supply system and feed excess rainwater to the groundwater and complete the system with the proper sewerage system to protect the available water resources. This addresses the issue of drought in dry season and help combat seawater intrusion to groundwater and help in protecting the agricultural and livelihood activities on those small islands. Currently, in dry season, we are forced to spend approximately $70 per ton to transfer water from capital to the affected communities. And even now, we have to spend nearly $500,000 to transport water every year. While this integrated solution would cost less than $5 to provide a ton of water to the community. And that doesn't include the co-benefits mentioned before. Distinguished delegates, one other example is the population consolidation. The geographic disbursement is a blessing, nevertheless a developmental challenge. We have communities with very small populations in very remote islands. These communities also require basic necessity, services, and protection from impacts of climate change. Relocating these communities with consent to other islands help reduce the total investment cost as well as recurrent cost for adaptation. It also increases the economic opportunities and provide access to better services and therefore increases resilience of the communities. Of course, there is an initial cost to this, not just financial, but social as well. But in the long term, it would be more beneficial. These two are just examples. We have also introduced elements of resilience to land use planning guidelines, coastal infrastructure guidelines, and environmental impact assessments that's done prior to projects. But there is still more room for improvement. Every passing day, we are experiencing and learning more and more about climate change and its impacts. It is important in order to maintain resilience. The policy guidelines and development pathways must be informed by the latest science and new information. Otherwise, we risk being obsolete. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Excellency. I would now turn to the third speaker, His Excellency Mr. Ronald Jumeau, Ambassador and Small Island Developing State Issues of the Seychelles, with his topic, the Archipelagic States, Seeds and Climate Change, Issues, Challenges, and Strategies for Cooperation. You have the floor, Excellency.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for the invitation for me to speak at this event. Never have the currents of international discourse and cooperation flowed so positively for archipelagic and states to come together to find island-specific and ocean-specific solutions to the climate and sustainable development challenges we face. For example, never has a COP, a climate change COP, focused so much attention on oceans as we're seeing here today, especially in the side events. Never have so many countries, organizations, civil society groups come together over a series. In fact, there are so many, it's really very difficult to choose which ones are going to. It's never happened before. And next year we go into the SDG 14 conference in New York. At the same time, we are going into very challenging negotiations, BBNJ negotiations, to find an agreement, some solutions to issues of biodiversity on the high seas. And it comes at a time when there is a lot more than ever happening in islands and large island states. I always call Indonesia our big brother, because although we, the large ocean states, some of us are SIDS, what happens to us is going to happen to them. Never before have we had so many initiatives going on, but sometimes amongst our own community, people are not sufficiently aware of them. And Biliana, when she speaks, she's going to talk about a strategy and a roadmap towards the sort of things, the challenges we face. For example, we have recently had a debt swap where we raised $22 million to turn 30% of our EEZ into marine protected areas. Our EEZ is 1.4, nearly 1.4 million square kilometers compared to the 455 square kilometers of land territory we have. And the debt swap launched work into a marine spatial plan. I know Indonesia has done a lot of work on marine spatial plans, but in our case, we're doing a marine spatial plan for the entire EEZ of Seychelles as one of the keystones to developing a blue economy, which the first speaker referred to. And in doing this, we found innovative ways to raise funding outside of the usual ways that people do it. For example, one thing that everybody I suppose knows, the Green Climate Fund has said, for example, that they will fund EBA projects. And for us, EBA, I was in an IUCN event on EBA yesterday where some people are confusing EBA and conservation. For me, it's bringing conservation and climate action and sustainable development all in one package by using your natural resources. And for islands, obviously, it's the oceans. And there's a new movement that's coming on, but not coordinated. Slowly, you're seeing oceans appear in NDCs. And so this offers an opportunity for some sort of a coalition alliance of states who are interested in furthering, because we all have to review our NDCs. I will not accept that any country does not review them. We already know we're on a path of about 3.5 degrees Celsius in global warming. So we have at this time this challenge of how do we, because no template exists as to how do you incorporate your oceans into your NDCs. So yesterday I made people laugh when I said, since our ocean space is 3,000 times bigger than our land territory, we are a liquid ocean. It stands to reason that we would include our oceans in our NDCs. So these are the challenges we face, and never have we had such an opportunity. Let us use this time whilst we are fine-tuning NDCs. It's a way of drawing attention to the oceans and also attracting not just financing means of implementation of all sorts, capacity building, transfer of technology, transfer development, etc. So this is the challenge I pose to everyone from one of the smallest island states, but largest ocean states. Don't judge us by our size, judge us by our ambition. And I challenge everybody here to be as ambitious as that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Very short, concise, and then I hope that it would have the discussion after that on that specific issue. Now, the fourth speaker is going to Speaker Biliana Cicin-Sain, the President Global Ocean Forum, that would state about the toward in 2016-2021, how to move the oceans and climate agenda forward from COP21 to COP22 and beyond. You have the floor, Billy. Thank you.
Yeah, I get to call him Dede, and he gets to call me Billy. So thank you, Ambassador. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here and to follow such a distinguished set of speakers. And, I just want to, I want to thank all the ocean champions in the room. We have many of them, all of them here and in the audience. It's been a long haul to bring oceans higher up into the UNFCCC, and we have done it, as Ambassador Jumeau rightly pointed out. So I just have a, quick overview of the strategic roadmap for action for the next few years. So I present you this report that we actually have summaries that are going around. And Anna, please, would you pass them out? We appreciate that, but please, next. And we prepare this with many, many groups around the world and with the leadership of, like Ambassador Jumeau and the participation of our Japanese colleagues from the Sasakawa Peace Foundation and from Grenada and from the World Ocean Network and many others. Next. But, the bottom line has been in the UNFCCC that even though, oceans and climate, as we well know, are so intertwined, and oceans is such a driver of climate, and that, the fact that many of the important effects and the most serious effects accrue to our archipelagic states, SID states, coastal states around the world, that this topic, had not been addressed much in the UNFCCC. Next. And so, it's been like a long process, starting first in Copenhagen with the Ocean Days in Copenhagen with many of the same partners over time. Next. And Indonesia was in the middle too. Then Cancun, and I'm going to thank Ambassador Jumeau. He had to get out of this. We were way out in some hotel, 6 miles away, and he got out of the negotiations to go co-chair this meeting. Yeah. Next, and then Durban, things got a little bit better in South Africa, but then things were really kind of low on oceans for a few years. So until we got to Paris. And in Paris, we had a tremendous mobilization on oceans by every facet of society, by the governments, by the NGOs, by the private sector, and so on. Go back one, please. And I'm sorry, go back. No, not forward. Forward. Sorry. Back. Yeah. Yeah, but this is the point I want to make. Is that, what we realize, is that we really have to have a long-term effort. We can't just go from COP to COP on this oceans and climate issues, but that we all together have to develop kind of a longer-term strategic action plan or roadmap on what do we need to do in the next 5 years, especially within the UNFCCC. But, in some cases, we're going to need action outside of the UNFCCC also. And then, so how do we really move forward on the issues? So it has to be more of a longer term view and not just COP to COP. Next. But of course, as I was saying, in Paris, there was tremendous mobilization. Next. And we had, so many organizers, including, Indonesia. And I have to thank Indonesia, because Indonesia was one of the first countries to put the oceans and climate agenda together. And that was in 2009 at the Manado meeting. So we thank you for that. Next. And many, many organizers. Yeah, we're just showing. Okay. Hendra, you can go like that. I wanted to thank Seychelles again and World Ocean Network and others. Yeah, please go on. And so what we decided last year is that we needed to really prepare a roadmap for action. So we created a big expert group with 37 colleagues around the world from many, many different regions of the world. And we focus especially on these 5 issues. What needs to be done in mitigation, adaptation, displacement, financing, and capacity development. Next. And, it's hard to give you what came out of this, in 2 seconds. But in fact, what we did, we try to look at for each issue, the current status of the issue and the science of the issue, and where was the issue, where is the issue in the UNFCCC process. And, how do we move the issue in the next few years? How, what kind of tools and strategies and opportunities within the UNFCCC can we take advantage of in the next few years? And of course, we also have to look at, the financial considerations related to each issue. So, we first began to develop these ideas last year at COP21, but then over the year, we developed this into a serious analysis. Next. And next. And so here, this is in a very abbreviated way, some of the major recommendations in each area. Of course, in mitigation, as I think our Indonesian speaker was saying at the beginning, Ahmad, that it's so important to be able to, account for the blue carbon ecosystems in the national reports to the UNFCCC and in the INDCs, that we must really be moving faster on reducing air emissions from ships. We have to really push on the renewable energy, ocean-based renewable energy front. And, we do have to keep in mind that we have to consider ocean-based carbon capture and storage if it can be done safely and with appropriate regulation. Next, on adaptation, really does have to be carried out through the integrated approach, especially, as the ambassador from Maldives was saying, and, using the ecosystem-based approach, which, as Ambassador Jumeau noted, is not, it's not protection, it is management, and it's multiple use management and protection. And then, of course, the MPAs are really important. Having coherent networks of MPAs are very important to protect marine biodiversity and enhance the resilience of the marine ecosystems. And one of the big points is that we can use low carbon blue economy approaches, or no carbon blue economy approaches, to both, help our communities become resistant to climate change, as well as to build economic growth. Next. Now, on this issue of displacement, we have a lot to do. The projections on displacement, even with the change scenarios of the Paris Agreement, they're still very bad. And therefore, we really need to move on improving international law on these issues in terms of definitions, rights, and procedures for climate-induced refugees and migrants. And also, we have to think about the financing issues. How do we deal with these situations that will arise more and more? Thank you. Next. Financing. Now, we have studied this carefully and think that, the global assessments that we have on how much it's going to cost to build resilience in coastal and SIDS and archipelagic communities has been very much underestimated. And so, that we really, the second point is that we need to develop a financial tracking mechanism to see, how much money is flowing to these most vulnerable areas, and how can we increase that amount of money. And of course, I think we need earmarked funds in the global public finance mechanisms, and we could also be earmarking at least part of the private funds that that are building infrastructure on the coastal zone, to devote some of that for coastal habitat protection and restoration. Next. The capacity development, we haven't done enough of this, and it is a central issue, and one where we have to move in very tangible ways. Promoting marine policy centers that work on oceans and climate, advancement of global marine observations, supporting our IPCC report on oceans, which we got last year, that we're also happy about. Next. Sustain ocean observations. Go one back, Hendra, please. Sustain ocean observations and so on. And as Manuel Cira is going to talk about, we have to continue the expansion of the public education efforts, because it is our people that they have to be mobilized, and they have to push the politicians to do more and more. Next. Given this kind of broad agenda, though, now we have to think very specifically and operationalize each major area. What needs to happen where and how much is it going to cost, and who's going to do it in the next 5 years. We also have to do a difficult exercise, which is, if you say you can forecast, how will all these actions get done? Will the aggregate impact be enough? Are we going to be okay or not? We need to be looking at those questions, because, looking at it just on one part at a time doesn't give you that overall aggregate view and that overall future view. Next. And so here, we're at the COP22, and the first thing is we said, all of us, all the champions said, hey, we have to really get the Oceans Action Day in the blue zone, in the formal zone. Forget this about being in the green zone all the time, So we are in the blue zone tomorrow, and I hope everybody's coming, and we will, I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. And then, we have to work on particular priorities right away. And one of them, for example, is, as Ambassador Jumeau said, we have to look at these INDCs and first help countries realize the ocean parts of their UN INDCs, help them to finance them and help them to move them ahead. And then also, we have to kind of encourage other countries to include the oceans in their INDCs. Next. Financing, we will develop a financial tracking mechanism, as I mentioned, which I think will be very key. Capacity development, we have new processes under the Paris Agreement. We have to get inside them and bring the oceans coast, SIDS and archipelagic states ideas in there. Next. And so we invite you to the Oceans Action Day. Next. It is on Friday. Saturday, tomorrow. And now, so, we're very thankful to the government of Morocco for hosting us and pushing this topic, for accepting this as a major part of the formal climate change agenda of the high-level champions on climate change, Madame El Haite from Morocco and Madame Biliana from France. So we're a formal part of the agenda, and we'll have formal results to input. Next. And so, it's going to be pretty complex from 9 a.m. in the morning till 9 p.m. So come up prepared. And we'll have what's called a showcase segment where we're showcasing initiatives. Next. And then a dialogue segment in the afternoon on the major issues: adaptation, mitigation, financing, blue economy. And then next, very important regional discussions in the evening on Africa, SIDS, and the Mediterranean. And then a little fun with a reception. So next. So, in conclusion, the Paris Agreement does give us hope. That was a tremendous landmark set of decisions that were made last year. So we all have to work on them. We have to really make it materialize, implement it. So we all have to come together. Everybody has their own thing they want to do, but we all have to be pulling in the same direction. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Okay.
Thank you for its comprehensive illustration on the strategic action that she has. Now I would like to ask your permission that in making this workshop very effective, so we had 4 panelists just before this. I would like to coming to this room to have a discussion with the 4 panelists that has already been given the statement. And I have the 10 minutes to have the first session on our discussion of the 4 speakers. Please have the floor and be concise and precise, please. Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Maybe just here.
Is this one on? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Regina Asariotis. I'm with the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. And I recognize 1 or 2 of you, including, for instance, Ambassador Jumeau, as having participated at an earlier side event where related issues were covered. This is an extremely important event, I think, today. And the following Oceans Day. The types of issues that you've mentioned go to the heart, I think, of the connection between oceans and sustainable development. And I wanted to draw your attention to the fact that we have been working in the field of coastal transport infrastructure resilience, in particular for SIDS. We're at the moment implementing a capacity building project funded under the UN Development Account in the Caribbean to develop a transferable methodology for adaptation planning. And I just want to highlight in the context, this has already come out in the action plan, in the strategy that was just presented, in the context of adaptation and also in the context of SDG 14, it's very much worth looking at the coastal zone in an integrated manner, because it is not just the marine ecosystem and the marine environment, but it is also the coastal zone, which is involved in all economic activities. So we're very happy to collaborate with any initiatives that are arising, and if there is any scope, please let's stay in touch. And I think we all have to work on this. And the last thing, maybe just to say, UNCTAD is the focal point in the UN system for the integrated consideration of trade and development issues. And you should know, at the last quadrennial conference, where our work program is defined and redefined, which was this July, there has been a very strong emphasis both on small island developing states, on SDG 14, and on this work on climate resilience, adaptation in transportation, and disaster risk reduction. So there is an opportunity to link that with, as Ambassador Jumeau mentioned, the ongoing parallel processes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Regina. And then just to give you a glimpse, of what she's offering, that UNCTAD is open for collaboration between the states and also the ocean coastal transportation issues. I would like to invite the 1 or 2 minutes from the 4 speakers that could maybe have their willingness to say something on the offering. Please.
Thanks for highlighting the work you're doing with states or large ocean states. As many of you know, practically all our population and our economic development activities are actually on the coast. In the case of Seychelles, we import 80 to 90% of what we consume. And it's not going to get much better than that because we just don't have the territory. At the same time, about 80% of our population is actually on the coast, despite the fact that we have mountains. So, but one of the challenges this raises is, if we're not careful, we're going to see a lot of hard infrastructure instead of us trying to use nature itself, because we have coral reefs, which, well, we all know are under siege around the world from ocean acidification and temperatures, high temperatures. We have mangroves, which the tsunami really showed around the world how mangroves can help, especially with extreme sea surges. But it's also good for catching sediment from the mountaintops as you get more erosion into the sea, onto the reefs, and as nurseries for fish. So such work, especially on how best to work with nature. And once again, I say it's not about conservation of nature, it's working with nature to protect the system, because in countries like ours, where the #1 industry is tourism, marine-based tourism, and the second is fisheries. If our nature goes, if our environment goes, so goes our economic viability. If our fisheries and tourism collapse, sea level rise is not the short-term problem we have. It's economic viability of states, because their economies could collapse from the effects of climate change on their ocean and coastal systems. So I'm glad when I go around the world and people say, oh, you're a city, your problem is sea level rise. And then they have this idea that sea level rise is so far away that we have time to address it. And you go home, the first thing you see is coastal erosion, which is partly due to sea level rise. So this sort of work and from you and other partners is very valuable. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. It's a very nice response on the offer by UNCTAD. Thank you very much. But it is not closed the session of the first session. I would like now to invite the other 4 speakers on the second session, and then after that we have to sum up what is going to happen and what had happened at this forum. Thank you very much. And then now I would like to invite Emily Pidgeon, Conservation International, with her topic as the initiative as a way to achieve less than 1.5 C target, achievement and future perspective. So you have the floor, Emily.
Terima kasih. Thank you very much. It's always a great honor to be a guest of the Indonesian government. Indonesia, I think, has a very complex country, but has been very, I think, brave and shown great leadership in addressing many of these issues that we see coming, and they are very aware of. Now, we've already had a number of speakers today speak very eloquently about the need for building resilience and adaptation in these island and archipelagic countries. And very clearly, these island nations are going to face the impacts of climate change and are already facing the impacts of climate change. But here we are at the UNFCCC COP, and every country has a responsibility to do what it can to mitigate climate change. And these island nations have a very particular approach available to them to contribute to the global effort when it comes to mitigating climate change. And that is this idea of blue carbon, which we've had mentioned already a couple of times today, but I suspect quite a few people in the audience don't know what it is. So I'm going to touch today on what is blue carbon and what does it mean for these island countries. So when we're talking about blue carbon, at least within this UNFCCC context, we're very specifically talking about 3 coastal ecosystems. And those are mangroves, seagrasses, and tidal marshes. Now, these 3 ecosystems are small in area. However, they are amazing at actually mitigating carbon. They can sequester carbon out of the ocean and out of the atmosphere at rates up to 10 times what we see in terrestrial tropical forests. And as a result of this large amount of sequestration, these ecosystems have phenomenal deposits, between 2 to 5 times the deposits of carbon that we see in terrestrial forests. And this here is a plot showing, comparing average carbon in tropical forests with these mangroves, tidal marshes, and seagrasses. And we traditionally think of carbon in natural ecosystems. If we think of the forests of Indonesia, for instance, the carbon that we think of is of those enormous trees that we see as we walk through those beautiful forests. And that is where the carbon is stored. In these coastal ecosystems, some of these mangrove areas, some of the ones I personally have had the pleasure of seeing in Indonesia, have enormous trees associated with them. But the place where the carbon is truly sequestered in these systems is in the soil below. And if you've ever walked through a mangrove system and been covered in icky, sticky black mud, that's the carbon that's sticking to you. And that these systems, if they're kept intact, can keep this carbon stored for centuries and millennia. Now, what that means in terms of an island country, this is an assessment that was done for the island of Yap, which is just north, or is north of Indonesia, east of the Philippines. And what these scientists did was they assessed the total carbon on the entire island, and that included the savanna at the top of the mountains in the island, the dryland forest that's on the slopes of the island, and then the mangrove, which is featured around the bottom of the island. So what they did, and this is their results. And on the left, you can see that the total carbon storage, comparing the savanna, the upland forest, and the mangrove, that this is a per area basis. So one hectare of mangrove had almost 3 times the carbon of 1 hectare of the upland forest on this island. So that then, again, forgive me for showing plots, but if we then look at the pie graphs on the side, what that's telling you is that while the area of mangrove on the island of Yap is only 12% of the area of the island, the carbon in that mangrove is 34% of the carbon on the island, of the natural sources of carbon on the island. So 12% of the area, 34% of the carbon stored in these natural ecosystems. So this is hugely significant. But we also know that these blue carbon ecosystems, the seagrasses, the mangroves, the tidal marshes, are some of the most threatened ecosystems on Earth. And they're threatened by numerous different types of pressures. Aquaculture is a very strong driver in Southeast Asia, where our friends from Indonesia come from. Also is agriculture, but we also see development, pollution, and a number of other drivers leading these systems to be lost at about 1% per year. or about 500,000 hectares per year of these ecosystems is lost. Now, when these systems are degraded or converted, all that carbon that I just talked about becomes vulnerable to being emissions into the atmosphere and the ocean. And I just, to sort of, these are small areas, so is this actually significant? Here's some work by my friend Pak Daniel Murdiaso from Indonesia, where he looked at the carbon in the country of Indonesia. And Indonesia is arguably the world's most important blue carbon country. It has almost a quarter of the world's mangroves and probably about the same seagrass. And it's about 20% of the total blue carbon in the world. But Indonesia has lost 40% of its mangroves in the last 30 years. And 42% of the global blue carbon emissions come from this one country. My friend Pak Daniel has calculated that if Indonesia was to stop its mangrove deforestation, this would reduce Indonesia's land use emissions, which is its single largest driver of emissions, by 30%. So this is significant and very significant when we're talking about these island and archipelagic countries. This is a huge opportunity for our friends in Indonesia, and to their credit, they are really recognizing this. So one of the first issues that we have had when it comes to blue carbon is making sure that countries such as Indonesia can actually start accounting for these systems. It's all very nice to recognize this, but we must be able to have the capacity and the technical knowledge to actually start including this when we account for our emissions. And the IPCC a couple of years ago produced and a supplement to its national greenhouse gas inventory guidelines on wetlands. And this very specifically has chapters on coastal wetlands. So it is now possible for countries to include emissions from coastal wetlands in their national reporting of greenhouse gas emissions. And Australia and the US have actually started the process of doing this. I think the UAE has also started this, and I know that this is under discussion in Indonesia. And many of us who are working on blue carbon consider this a priority to support countries in understanding how to do this. As has also been mentioned, a number of countries have also started integrating these coastal ecosystems, blue carbon in various forms in their NDCs, and this is wonderful, show of leadership by these countries, and needs to be supported and encouraged, and other countries need to understand how this is possible. So if you want to understand more about blue carbon, I'm going to advertise this session. There is a coalition or a partnership of countries and related institutions that was formed during the Paris COP last year, which is the International Partnership for Blue Carbon, and the Australian government is coordinating that. I know Indonesia was one of the founding members of the partnership, and that partnership is hosting this event tomorrow. So sneak out of the oceans session for an hour and come and hear more about blue carbon, and especially hearing about some of the countries that are already including blue carbon in their NDC. So that'll be tomorrow at 1:15 in the Arabian Room. And I encourage everybody who is in the least bit interested on this topic to attend that session. So with that, I thank you. I thank my hosts. And I am very excited to see this oceans and the value of these systems for both adaptation and mitigation really coming to the fore in our discussions here at the COP. So thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Now, I would like to invite it should be 3 speakers, because in one topic there are 2 speakers that would like to hand in hand in making this topic: climate change, needs behavior change, experience in resilience and small-scale fisheries, will be taken by Mr. Gerald and Mr. Yusuf Saifuddin. I would like now to invite them to have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everybody, for coming for the speakers today. It's been a great, it's always a great lesson for me. And my job is actually very easy, because I'm simply here to connect some dots, to connect the champions here at the global level to a champion we're lucky enough to work with in Karimunjawa, Pak Yusuf, who I'll introduce shortly, because it's champions at both of these levels that are going to be critical. And that connects us to another important point. The president of the COP, when this was open, talked about a time of action. And the Paris Agreement has set us forth in a whole set of actions that are necessary to bring that to fruition. But I need to make perhaps a strange connection here. When I was married in 1988, it's a while ago now, Bikini Painu from Tuvalu stood up at the World Climate Conference and made this point about climate change and survival. And it has taken a long time to get to this point with the Paris Agreement. And I am heartened to be able to introduce Pak Yusuf, because while this discussion has been going on, and I have been engaged in the negotiations since the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committees, action has been taken place. So I want to describe, at least introduce that. And the focus here is around small-scale fisheries, because as we think about this, of all the things that have been addressed, this is where half of the fish are taken globally. 50% of the fish take. So Pak Yusuf is working with communities where also 9 out of the 10 jobs in this industry, in the fishing industry, reside. This is half of those jobs are jobs for women. And it is critical for food security, for jobs, for the habitat that we talk about in terms of coastal protection and blue carbon, and obviously in terms of resilience. When we think about taking action, and this is something that Pak is going to talk about, it fits within the fabric of a community. And communities that are woven together by jobs and need and livelihoods and culture and dignity. It's about changing behavior within that context. And it's a privilege to be able to hear today from Pak Yusuf, who will describe how changing behavior is going to be absolutely critical to securing resilience within communities and actually translating the decisions of Paris, the Paris Agreement, into action on the ground. It's about hearts and minds, and I'd like to hand over to Pak Yusuf now, who will hopefully speak to both for you.
Thank you, Gerald. Hello, my name is Yusuf Saifuddin. My presentation is how community adaptation of territorial user right for fisheries turf is important to climate change adaptation. Karimunjawa Island is located in the north of Central Java, Indonesia. In Karimunjawa Island, there are 22 islands, and we focus in the Nyamuk village. Climate-related problem in Karimunjawa is decreasing coral coverage in the red box, decreasing reef fish biomass for economically important fisher for the community, further fishing distance, smaller fish size caught, less fish amount caught, and unpredictable monsoon. The territorial user right for fisheries serve as a tool. As the management authority, the Karimunjawa National Park, in a partnership with Rare Indonesia, have been working on this climate change related issue with the village. We learned that allocating rights to community in managing their fishing ground is a strategy to improve the community involvement, as well as their welfare.
We propose the turf as a tool to address the community issue. We having the turf located in front of their village, it support their food security in the face of the climate change impact, bad weather, coral bleaching, unpredictable monsoon. To date, Nyamuk village already have their turf. The access for fishing is exclusively given to the Nyamuk villages, as well as the responsibility to manage the area. In addition to that, apply several fisheries regulations in the turf, such as seasonal closure, no fishing on the date of 18 until 28 of the month according to Islamic calendar, and says limitation. How to get the turf? To adopt a new approach, the community must understand and own the change. Fisher had a series of group discussion to design the turf. We use social marketing to reach people. A variety of media helps spread the message to the Nyamuk community. Location of the turf, the benefit, and the rules agree upon in the turf. We use poster, billboard, street banner, t-shirt, sticker, and mascot like you see in the Indonesia pavilion. Community mobilization will done by creating a mass event where the campaign mascot serve to attract people interest and conduct a quiz about turf regulation. In addition, a quiz in the street around the village was also performed to reach most of the villages of Nyamuk. Besides social marketing, the community built the working group to manage the turf. The turf working group was trained so that we'll be able to manage the turf. The training include capacity assessment, decision making, work planning, and team building. We also record fish catch so that we will have measure on the fisheries status and good record on fisheries expected behavior. The main objective of recording is to know how many fishers who conduct activity in the turf, bring to mind the applicable rules in the turf, and ask fishers from outside Nyamuk Island not to perform fishing activity in the turf. And we also do patrol and surveillance, ensuring the compliance to turf regulation. We hope that in the coming years that there are more fish and bigger fish in the turf. So we don't need to go far away to catch fish. So we will have food security as climate change and in case of more storm. That means we can be less vulnerable to climate change, negative impact, and spend more time with our family. However, the work is not yet done. We need to communicate the turf to other villages in the park and have an MOU with the park authority as the legal endorsement to the initiative and to support national adaptation planning. Back to Cira.
Thank you very much, Gerald and then Pak Yusuf on this. And I would like now to invite the last speaker of this session. He is Mr. Manuel Cira, the World Ocean Network, that would like to talk about the public involvement in developing resilience capacity for climate change adaptation. While we are talking about the last speaker, this will also my task to inform you that at the end of the meeting, I would like to inform that the ministry is going to present the token to all the speakers. So, Mr. Manuel Cira, you have the floor.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Chairman, for this opportunity. I represent here World Ocean Network, which is an alliance of aquariums, museums, educational organizations throughout the world. And we've been trying to foster sustainable use of the ocean for the past 15 years. Now, collectively, a network like that can reach millions, tens of millions of people. In relation to ocean and climate change, I would like to stress that we now have a framework. We have the Lima Declaration for Education and Awareness, and we have the UNESCO Global Action Plan for Education for Sustainable Development, both issued in 2014. So we have a framework, and in one way, as Ambassador Jumeau said earlier, a lot is changing. We hear a lot more about ocean, islands, etc. But we still have a long way to go. And I will talk a little bit of my experience from another point of view, trying to raise awareness of people who need to change their way of lives, people who are part of the problem and who could become part of the solution. If you look at these numbers here, this is a survey we have in a center in the north of France with visitors coming from UK, Belgium, and France. And you see that only a third of these people, and we have answers from tens of thousands, only a third of these people are really convinced that, well, we have to do something for climate change, etc., etc. So there's still a long way to go. I will highlight two different points now. One is that we need to share a common understanding, a common awareness, a common concern in front of climate change. That will be my first point. And the second point will be about empowerment, to inspire action and to empower. So moving to, I just added a quote in relation to sharing a common concern. We really need to know that we live on the same planet. I love this UNESCO slogan, you know, one ocean, one planet. We started a program, Island Stories, 5 years ago in 2011, together with AOSIS. We had, this program was mainly, well, in France, with two exhibitions in two different, venues, two different sea centers, and a whole list of activities that you see there. After 5 years, we've reached more than 3 million people. So that means that we can really reach many people if we mobilize these aquariums, museums, educational organizations throughout the world to raise awareness of the public of what's happening. The focus of this exhibition was not about the fate of small island developing states or whatever. It was about the solutions you are finding to face climate change challenges, and these solutions can inspire other countries who will be meeting the same challenges in the future. That was the focus of the exhibition. Now, another example, one of our speakers talked about blue economy earlier and the participation of communities. We talk about blue society, meaning blue growth, but with taking into account societal needs, taking into account ethics and solidarity. We've been working on this concept to tell a story, to be able to tell a story to the public. And with workshops throughout Europe and now in other countries, we come out with some first recommendations about what needs to be done in relation to outreach and education. Strangely, we need a lot more awareness and education of citizens and all stakeholders so that they can act in an adapted way. We have done a lot, but there's still a lot to do. We need more dialogue and cooperation between stakeholders and citizens. What appears very often in very different settings is that they don't know each other and they don't really know what the others know, and they need to work together to start building something new and different. We need more knowledge, more research, more education, and better governance mechanisms, especially to streamline the involvement of all actors. So that's what's coming out as keys for the success of blue growth in society. Now, moving to my other point, to inspire action and to empower. So I have another quote there to, well, inspire us. And I'm going to give 3 different examples of what we can do now, of what some of you can also do. The first thing is we can promote ocean literacy, ocean education. This still needs to be done. There are many countries where there's still not enough about ocean in school curricula. And we also need to inform, educate other people, other stakeholders, not only school children. My second point is about exchanging ideas, inspiring action. And with World Ocean Network, we're now building a virtual community of citizens of the ocean who can share their ideas and inspire each other with their own successes, like Yusuf just inspired us with his story. And the third point is about World Ocean Day. We can all celebrate World Ocean Day, June 8th. And as Ambassador Jumeau was reminding us, next year, there will be this UN meeting about SDG 14 in New York, and World Ocean Day will be during the meeting. And I really think that we should take this opportunity to have an incredible celebration of World Ocean Day throughout the world, to talk about islands, ocean, and climate to the largest public we can reach. And I will end with this call for a huge celebration of Ocean Day next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manuel. And then I would like now to have the last exactly 10 minutes from my watch. And I would like to invite people's presence and then also to the guests that would like to have clarification, information about everything that speakers has already been saying. And I would like now to invite you for the floor. Yes, sir. Can I have one more from the floor? Yes, please. So the first one is Papa, and then after that is Madam.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Andi Gasakia. I'm from the Agency for Meteorology, Climatology, and Geophysics of Indonesia. And let me first refer to the what Ambassador Jumeau is actually mentions, that we are ran out of times because we are focusing only on the sea level rise. But in fact, all the problems that the people are facing is actually on local basis, on local parameters, especially, for example, when we back home, then Pak Yusuf facing about the acidifications and then the temperature rise and the chlorophyll is decreasing, and that happens a lot. And therefore, I would agree on what Billy is actually suggesting. Let's put these oceans on the NDC, because we are not simply enough on you mentioned about that we are not enough anymore to have the forecastings, but we have to move onto the impact-based forecasting and risk-based warning, especially on related with the oceans. And therefore, I would suggest that we could agree on the what you suggesting on putting the NTC and not waiting for another COP, but let's starting from now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pak Andi. It is a good inputs that we have to take note. Yes, please, Madam. You have the floor.
Good afternoon. Isabel Torres Noronha, Future Ocean Alliance and Inventar. It's very good to be here and see my former advisor, Biliana Cicin-Sain. And I've been with you know, I've been with the forum since it was born in Johannesburg before being a student with her. And I am very passionate about capacity development rather than training. I've worked a lot with IOC and with its deputy for tailored capacity development. And my dream is that really develop developing countries become developed because they are empowered, they know what they want to do, they can pay their bills, and they don't need to ask others or demand what to do. And because of that, what I would like to remind concerning capacity development is that organizations and countries that are donating for this need to follow up on their actions. It is not enough to have an activity. That's an output. People need to be able to implement what they have learned. And when we get to this, I'm talking about adaptation, because I have done it on the field with some islands. I had that privilege. We, when I say we, it's the people I work with, and I feel like them, which is to do adaptation in small island states, agencies that are promoting their accreditation, they also need to follow up on creating their own units for developing projects and managing the projects, so that the direct access to the funds, it's really with efficacy, rather than just, a value, rather than just tracking the money. We need to track the results of the money for the country. And this is my suggestion, and I would like to hear from more on this.
Thank you very much, Madam. And then now I would like to invite from the floor, from the rostrum, if someone could also make the response on it. Yes, Ambassador.
Thank you very much. All the presentations and the comments and contributions from the floor have been very, very interesting, and they serve to highlight the scope of the task that we face. Yesterday, someone asked me in the IUC and EBA event, why don't the oceans feature in the negotiations as much as the forests? And one of the answers was, of course, the forests have been much better, forest nations have been much better organized, even outside and before climate change issues came to the fore, on issues defending forest countries. The other issue I talked about is, despite the size of the forests we're talking about, like despite the size of the forests of Indonesia or Brazil or the Congo Basin, compared to that, the ocean we're dealing with is just immeasurable. And this is one of the problems we're facing in getting together, especially in replicating and upscaling all the good things we're hearing. For example, I remember the first time I really got to hear something about what Indonesia is doing about as an ocean-based economy was at Rio+20, when I sat on a panel with the then minister. And then we lost contact until 5 years later. You have another conference of sometimes CBD or things like that. And so that is one of the challenges we're facing. And it brings me to what the World Ocean Expert Forum de la Mer was talking about, multidisciplinary and multi-stakeholder dialogues. We have to get better organized. Obviously, we can't do it on a global ocean scale, but regional scale, it's because the oceans here, there's been a very strong, for obvious reasons, focus on islands. And this is one of the challenges we face, in that too often oceans are seen as an island problem, and it is not an island problem. 3 years ago, someone called me, I'm based in New York, someone from the South African Broadcasting Corporation called me and says, I want to talk to you about the issue, come back to sea level rise, because it's a big problem for the islands of Africa. And I said, I'm sorry, no, it isn't. If you take the population of the islands of Africa and you take a country like Egypt, 80 million people, 40 million people in the Nile Delta, that's a much bigger problem in terms of the human size. So it's getting all this, getting us all together. In Seychelles, for example, we worked with, I have to give a shout out to the Global Island Partnership. And through the Global Island, which helps us replicate, and we offer to share what we've done. And it was through the Global Island Partnership that we got our partners, the Nature Conservancy, to help us with the debt swap, and they in turn brought in people from the philanthropic community. On the issue of capacity development, We always hear people talking of lifelong learning, lifelong development. Too often, some of the help we get is for the duration of the project. And then you get a well-meaning organization. It could be a multilateral, a intergovernmental, multilateral, it could be governmental, it can be NGOs. They go and they bring out leaflets as this is what they've done around the world. Until you visit those countries and you'll try and find out what happened to that project. It fizzled out. Not because they mismanaged it, it's just because the way we organized it. And these are the challenges, I think, because the subject, what I was talking about, issues, challenges, and strategies for cooperation, which has been addressed by Biliana, Global Ocean Forum, and all our friends and supporters. So I agree totally. I've heard all these things before. And are we going to hear the same thing in New York when you talk about SDG 14, when it'll take more of a slant on SDGs? And when do I meet you again? Some of you I meet all the time. Some of you are involved in my country or in our regions. We have to do a better job. One of the problems with oceans, when you got biodiversity, we go to CBD. Not just CBD, but CBD. Environmental issues and about UNEP. Oceans, you don't know where to go. That's why UN Oceans have put, the UN had to put together a group called UN Oceans. And the problem with oceans is that, I'll give you an example. There's SDG 14 conference. The intention was to have a conference every 3 years, co-chairs, co-hosted by a developed country and a developing. UN put a stop to it. We couldn't get it through the UNGA. We have a one-off oceans conference. Okay, so, but don't lose hope. It's the same with the SIDS conference. There is not a resolution to have a SIDS conference every 5 years. We have to fight for it every year. And we've managed to keep it going. So don't lose hope.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would say that the time is so limited, and then I have to also see the facts that the 1.5 hours is not very long, and then we are now have to close the meeting. But before that, I have a little observation on this event, and maybe my observation is not very true, but I think that I have to take it a note. Climate change is, and its consequences have long been globally recognized, and its effects are too obvious to ignore. Developing archipelagic states and small island developing states face serious threats from adverse impacts of climate change. Their geographic realities surrounded by the sea and with vulnerable communities and landscapes being threatened by sea level rise, ocean acidification, rising temperatures, and increased storm. Adaptation is a matter of urgency for development and survival for these vulnerable countries. Mitigation remains a strategic longer-term issue, which in our case will have to be integrated into our adaptation approaches and programs. Coastal ecosystems such as mangroves, tidal marshes, and seagrass provide benefits and surface that are essential for climate change adaptations. These ecosystems have the potential to remove and store atmospheric carbon at much greater rates than terrestrial ecosystems, and are now being recognized for their role in mitigating climate change and subsequently referred to as blue carbon ecosystem. Conserving this ecosystem seems to be the best opportunity for archipelagic states and island states, mangrove, to mitigate the climate change impacts. The third one is the participation of local community is the key factor in mitigating the climate change impacts and building resilience. Thus, Knowledge enhancement and adaptation measures for their communities is necessary. These are successful pilot projects that demonstrate, for example, community-led behavior changes in small-scale fisheries that can be adapted and scaled up to meet local situation in its archipelagic states and island states. Support is now needed to expand such actions and to include adaptation and mitigation action more broadly in climate policy structures, such as through national greenhouse gas accounting. Some of the summary will be written, and I would ask to Mr. Purnomo to maybe have this paper out. And for myself, I would like to see that the challenges that has already been always shouted by Ambassador would also be a good moment in time to have the response from all of us. So this is the summing up of what we discussed this morning, and I would like now to that the guests are kindly to give the final applause for the speakers. Thank you very much for coming, and then thank you very much also to participate at this event. Now, Pak Purnomo, you have the floor to have the token from your ministry. I would like now to declare the event to close.
Because
I'll be there all day.
I'd be.
We can chat now.
Okay, it's just the.